Genesis B featured on Billboard, ABC News, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the AP, and many others, and now the Let's Give a Damn podcast. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Yep. Thank you so much for having me. It was good spending time with you in New York this past weekend. So, yeah, this is long overdue, actually. So,
This really is. I was thinking right before we started recording when we first met. It was only a year and change ago. It was two Freedom Rising conferences ago in April of 2023. That's when we met for the first
wow,
time. But I feel like I've known you for a long time.
it seems longer. It
It
seems much
seems
longer.
longer. We think along the same lines. We are doing similar work. We'll get to this, people, not things, and all the other stuff you're doing. Me with Let's Give a Damn. I really, really, really appreciate your heart. I appreciate the work that you do. There you go. Show it off. People, not things. People are going to know about people, not things. My audience is going to know about it. It's one of those things, and we'll get into this in a little bit. But when I hear, tell me if you experience this. When I created Let's Give a Damn, to me, it was such a simple phrase that was like, how are people not using this idea already? Right. And people are always like, oh my God, how is this not like a thing that everybody's talking about? Because Let's Give a Damn makes so much sense. I feel the same way about people, not things. Like, this is obviously something that you created. You were able to copyright it and you have all the stuff around it. But it seems like, holy shit, like, why wasn't everybody talking about people, not things before? Did you have that experience when you sort of came up with this? And we'll do a deep dive later. But did you have
Yeah,
that experience?
I always say I didn't create people, not things. I feel like people have been saying people, not things in like hashtags and things before. I wasn't privy to that till I actually like looked at it, but it was something that was gifted to me from something higher when I was in right after my protest that went viral, and I was in this really strange state, probably the lowest point that I've been in, and started painting my barriers, getting really clear around my philosophy and what I wanted to do out into the world now that I had an international platform, right? And the term people, not things just started coming to me. So by no means do I feel like I created it. I copywrote it because it's the name of my book, but I don't own the phrase. You
No,
know,
it
if
totally.
people want to use that, I actually want people and encourage people to use that phrase when it comes to advocating against the exploitation of people, advocating against the labeling of people in order to exploit and degrade them. So yeah, I don't own it.
Well, I appreciate the humility, and I expect that from you. But I just I want to say two things, right? You're right. People have been. People, not things, is an idea that has been around since the beginning of time. Same with Let's Give a Damn. But I want to also give you credit that you sort of are taking it to the next level in the same way that I, of course, give a damn by itself. That people have been saying that since forever.
Yeah.
Um, I too woke up one morning, literally woke up one morning, and Let's Give a Damn, this community version of Give a Damn, was on my mind.
Yeah.
Again, yeah, I don't credit myself with it. Yes, I took it to the next step. I started sort of something around it. I bought the domain. I trademarked this just so we could steward the brand well. But like, it's the same thing where, yeah, but there is also credit for you taking it to the next level. And we're going to do a deep dive on people,
For
not
sure.
things here soon. So yes, both things are true. It
Yeah.
belongs to the world, to everybody. And it's incumbent upon us when we get these sort of ideas,
Yeah, to
especially
double
ones,
down, to
double
double
down on it.
down and really take it to the next level of like, if this is a message I truly believe in, like I'm incorporating this philosophy in all aspects of my life, right? It's in, it's
100%.
it's on, it's on my clothing. It's what I say no matter what when I go do my motivational speaking to churches, Muslim folk, rich folk, poor folk, young folk, old folk, like this is what I say to everybody and deliver that message. I think it is an ancient message that we have forgotten and been programmed to forget.
100%. And I can't wait to get to that here in a few minutes. Let's begin, though, Genesis, by especially with, I think, your sort of background and the work that you've done since as you've grown up. I think it's really important to get some backstory here. And so I'd love for you to go back as far as you are willing to go and sort of share with us. the people, places, and things that made you who you were back then and who you are today as you continue to grow up, develop your voice and your heart and your mind and your wisdom. Who
Sure.
who were those people, places, and things for you?
People, places, and things. The people goes back as far as I think my grandfather, Reverend Clyde Briggs. I definitely encourage your audience to Google him and learn about his journey and incredibly inspiring civil rights activists from Mississippi. That's one of the places I was raised there. Um, and my grandfather was really involved in the voting rights movement. He's a war vet and came back to Mississippi and was like, why are we still living like third class citizens? I just fought for this country.
Wow.
How come that my kids are going to this school that's, separate but not equal, right? In terms of quality. Why are there two, three teachers to 400 students or whatever? Like, why is this? So, education rights, voting rights, and organizing. He got really involved with organizing, was the pastor of several churches in Mississippi. A lot of when I think a lot in terms of war strategy and battle strategy. That's just how I was raised. My father, Ishmael B, was also um, one of the major the person in my life, the way I am now in terms of my compassion for humanity and my bold action in working with community and trying to add value to issues that bother me personally is my father, and he trained me to think in war strategy. I come from a military family. So my grandfather, one of the strategies I like to share, which is really interesting, is Black folks were fighting for the right to vote and exercising that right, meaning going to the voting centers, meaning having to pass literacy tests and all of these things that were meant to keep them from voting, right? Making sure you have an ID, no vagrancy laws. If you were out on the street and couldn't show that you had a job, you get arrested, right? So him and his comrades would make transportation convoys similar to the military to take Black citizens to and from voting centers to make sure that they weren't killed and harassed by the KKK,
Wow.
AKA law enforcement, White Citizens Council, like everyone, racism is structural and it's all through the judicial system still to this day. Um, having someone lie in the back of the car with a shotgun in case they were ran off the road, like many times the KKK tried to run him off the road, right? He had a system, or he would beep a certain number of times while approaching the house, so to let my big mama know that he's approaching and he has company, so she can get her shotgun. Like, we have a very specific narrative around the Black experience in America, and it's like very passive, very Martin Luther King passive, respect to him and activists who did use those modes of nonviolence. But there were many deacons of defense, a lot of Black people who were trying to arm their community against the police, who were the KKK at the time, and sometimes even now, but not all. Let me say that. So these type of strategies just for survival is something that was taught to me growing up as a child that I really embedded inside of the way that I think. It's okay and beautiful to be passionate and bold. I'm more passionate and sensitive than I am logical, but I was taught that side of logic and war and strategy and battle and understanding your enemy, understanding the tactics of your enemy. So my father, definitely two people who shaped me, and my mother, Lisa Briggs, who really strong woman, 20 years retired military, a nurse, an RN. She, for me, represents service, knowing what it means to be in service of humanity. Like, she does her all for her patients. She taught me that humility. There are no cameras and microphones involved when she's doing the
Right.
bulk of her work. Her name is not in lights like a lot of activists now. We, try to be celebrities. When I think of activism, I think of celebrity. I don't even like to be called an activist anymore because of like what it has become in our celebrity culture. But my mother taught me the humility of like, you don't have to broadcast every time you're helping somebody. right? So what you see on social media, the things that I do, I'm doing a lot in the real world, a lot on social media, but that's probably 10% of the service that I do to my community for my communities, the value that I add to my communities. I try not to broadcast, so my mother taught me that aspect. So I think it's balance. The boldness, the resistance, but also the humility of leading from behind. You don't have to be up front all the time. That's what Lao Tzu teaches. Lead from behind, you know? So people, places, I was raised in Mississippi from age fourth grade, fifth grade, up until I went away to college at age 20. I was a late start in college because I'm a Katrina survivor. My family and I, we stayed and rebuilt after Katrina. So I didn't go to college till I was 20. I was like the old person in the freshman class. Um, and then New York shaped me. When I went to college, New York, I was there from age 20 to 30, but also going back and forth to Mississippi because I have an organization called Strive Till I Rise. So every summer, every break that I got, I was going back and working with the Boys and Girls Club around youth empowerment, doing motivational speaking, even at age 20, whatever I could offer, whether it was like around education or your consumer power, your voting power. So Mississippi and New York are the places that have molded me the most. Where else? Things. I think being raised Muslim was a very interesting, being raised Muslim in the South was a very interesting
That's quite the
upbringing.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, in the Bible Belt. But yeah, Islam is such a beautiful, beautiful religion. And it's like I always take whatever chance I can to say that because we do live in a very Islamophobic society where we think one thing about Muslim people and it's like terrorists, like especially since like 9/11. I was just in sixth or seventh grade when that happened. And I remember the conversations around and feeling very alienated, thinking like, no, this is not what Islam is. You guys are conflating two different things. And but Islam is the golden path that has allowed me to arrive where I am today as an artist, an art activist, I should say. I know I shy away from the word activist, but I don't have a better term right now. I'm working on one. Advocate, maybe.
Let me know when you figure it out because I feel the same way.
Someone who gives a damn. I don't know. Um, so, but my parents also taught me like we had a Torah and the gospel that we had to read also. You get what I mean? So we
I
had to
do.
learn about the monotheistic religions in general. And it was mainly to prepare me for a moment like this, where we see there's my father knows that there's so much conflict in the world between religion. Like religion is used to steal resources. Religion is used to fearmonger. Religion is used, but the monotheistic religions are so similar. The same prophets are in all the books, and I'm just like, I mean, in terms of sequence, and my father is a very unique man. I think it's interesting that he raised us that way, to understand like and not just monotheistic practicing people, but our Jewish brothers are worthy of respect and dignity, just like our Christian brothers are worthy of respect and dignity. And outside of that, our atheist siblings are worthy of respect. Humanity, humans are. We
Yeah.
can't use the generalization to just tag on our fear and stereotypes and biases upon people. So that's how I was raised, with the philosophy of people, not things, before I named it. And.
Yeah, I mean it's you sharing some of that context. It's no wonder that you came out being the person, the incredible, beautiful person that you are,
Thank
based
you.
on these, yeah, the bold sort of militaristic, upbringing alongside the servant leader, like nurse, in your family as well. A bunch of things that I want to bring up based on that. One is my one of my favorite things about myself is that I'm religious. One of my least favorite things about myself is that I'm religious because I find so much beauty in being religious, and I'm a universalist to the core. Like I grew up Christian, therefore I have sort of stayed in the Christian world personally, but I believe that we're all, we're all getting in, whatever in is. I'm not even sure what in is, but we're all getting there. You mentioned the monotheistic religions, but I have so many, Baha'i friends as well, and Sikh
Yeah.
friends, and I could go on and on. All these incredible folks, and I too want to bring up, as someone who was raised to not just fear, but even go a step further and hate the Muslims around me. I
Mm,
was a teenager when 9/11 happened, and all
yeah.
of those the bullshit and the lies. I mean the horrific lies that resulted in millions of people dying and being displaced over the next few years. On our taxpayer dollar, we're seeing more of that now. Like some of the purest, most devout, compassionate, peace-filled, loving people that I know are Muslims, and
That makes sense.
they get that from Islam. It's not like they get that from somewhere else. No, that is in Islam.
Oh yeah.
In every I hate how my people, the Christians, love to shit on Muslims and all the things that fringe sort of yeah, the sort of fringe Muslims do when they distort what, the teachings of Islam. Well,
Sure.
we've got, what are y'all pointing your fingers over at the Jews or the Muslims or the whoever for? Like, we could talk till we're blue in the face till the end of time about how many times the Christian God has been used to rape and pillage and steal and slaughter and colonialize most of the world. I mean, look at how many places and countries and peoples and territories the UK, a Christian nation, and the US, a Christian nation. I use air quotes around that. All the colonializing these places have done, and most of the time it's been done in the name of God. It's been done in the name of
Yeah. Even
furthering.
especially here, like the KKK was labeling themselves as a Christian group, burning crosses on the lawns of people,
Yeah, yes,
you know?
exactly. You have
Yeah, but
those.
I don't point at the KKK and say this is what Christianity is.
No,
I think,
it's a distortion of
yeah,
the
people just
universal love
need
of God.
people need to think for
Yes.
themselves. They need to think critically. They need to, not just be um, regurgitating things that the people around them, their community, their teachers, their parents tell them. I think that is a huge reason why society is the way that it is. There's not a lot of free thinkers,
Yeah,
right? If you take 2 seconds to really think about the propaganda that's floating around any generalization of a group and do your own research, you'll find quickly that it is propaganda. But people don't want to do their own research.
yeah,
I think the most tantalizing thing in the world is for someone to tell you you are inherently better than somebody else. I'll say that again. The
100%.
most tantalizing thing in the world, to where you want to believe it when you're told this, especially as the children, this is how you indoctrinate children, is that you inherently are better, more deserving, more entitled than another human being based on who you are or what religion you're born into. So I think people want to believe that, but people who do believe that as an adult, I understand children, but as an adult, people
Sure.
who choose to continue to believe this lack basic critical thinking skills. And I'm not trying to shade anybody. I'm not trying to call anyone stupid or unintelligent, because you can be very intelligent and still not be a free thinker, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have seen how I feel like that what you just described has accelerated. It was probably, I mean, it's always been around, not probably, it's always been around. We have always been susceptible, no matter our intelligence level, we have always been susceptible to propaganda and just outright lies. If they're said in the right tone and they come from the right place and the person, we believe it. But I feel like, so that's always been around. But I do feel like there has been an acceleration of that since 2014 and 15. I always say that I don't understand it. Like, I think for generations from now, we will study how Donald Trump, an actual unintelligent person, like, he's not smart, like, he doesn't know things, he doesn't know lots of facts, he doesn't know how the world runs, right? He thinks when he talks and shares about all the climate stuff and all of this, and he's not a very smart person. How this person, not knowing a lot about a lot, someone who all the real estate folks in New York for decades have known, don't do business with that guy. He will cheat you. He will not pay his bills, right? So this is not a pretty remarkable person. And yet 9, 10 years later, after he started his first campaign officially, there are still thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people that attend his rallies, listen to the nonsense, and they believe it. They believe that he's still. I saw a video the other day of uh, at one of the rallies, somebody interviewed one of the people attending, and they said, "Who's the president of the United States?" And they said, Donald Trump is still the president. And then they corrected themselves and said, no, he's the commander in chief. He's still in charge. He's still running things. This is 9 years. This is a long time after we have been able to see firsthand how ridiculous this person is. They still believe that he is running things behind the scenes and that Joe Biden is not, right? Like, so, um, anyway, I forget how we started on that, but we don't.
Yeah, yeah.
It,
I think that when I think about Donald Trump and the people who follow Donald Trump, I think less about Donald Trump as the entity and more about this just kind of lets us know where we're at as a nation, and I think where we
sure.
have been. I think Donald Trump just gave, like, people have been feeling these same ways for a really long time, you know, the things that he talks about
He
and
just
is
gave them
about.
permission to.
Yeah, yeah. And so I don't really blame those people for supporting him. I think I have a poem called Trump the Symptom. And I think in the poem I talk about how Trump is just a symptom of a money-hungry system with no regard for the youth, no regard for the troops, no regard for the truth. You know, Trump is as American as apple pie. Like, for someone like me who grew up in Mississippi and like understanding the levels of what capitalism, patriarchy, misogyny, racism, like, this is what America is to me. I'm working towards something different. Our communities are working towards something different, but um, I don't really look at Trump supporters as like the dumb people I think a lot of people look at them as. I see them as American people. You know, I think I'm not surprised. It's not for me to
Yeah,
really degrade them in any way. I think they have found somebody who speaks to them and their ideals, and it just shows how divided and torn America is. It just kind of has shed a light on it, and our issue with miscommunication and how easily people believe things on the left and the right and in the middle,
100%.
right? So it's like I would rather get to the base of like why that is. Why are we so prone to celebrity and miscommunication? And you know, these are the consequences of a failing capitalistic, a failing a society who has reached a technological revolution, but has not reached a spiritual revolution. This is what we're seeing are the consequences of that. And I try to look at things more like that. Because there are times in my life where I believe things that people would say, dang, you must have been stupid to believe that. I do.
Absolutely.
I believe in growth. I believe that people have a right to change their mind when they're given different information. Like you about the Muslim folks, where you were bombarded by this negative stuff as a teen, but as an adult, you changed your mind about that. Um, so I think my approach is a little different from a lot of people. Like, I don't really bash Trump supporters. I think Trump and Biden are two sides of the same coin.
Absolutely.
I do understand that Trump, for a lot of folks like myself in marginalized communities, is worse. But I do think that Biden and people who are in the leadership of the Democratic Party placate the marginalized. They don't really make a whole lot of changes to help our freedoms, but they will play to us and get our vote. So I'm kind of like in this place where, dang, does the whole entire system just have to be demolished and rebuilt? You know, rather than rah rah Trump supporter, you bad you, or you support Biden, you bad, you supporting a genocidal maniac. It's more like it's the structure. These people represent, these are
Yeah.
just men.
Yeah.
Assigning so much power to any man will render you powerless. I say that in the poem too. So rather than me focusing all my attention on those representations of the system, how do we really get to the core of this system? And do we really want to change it? I think most people who say they want it to change honestly don't. They'd rather be in the comfort and the privilege of living in the capitalistic patriarchal system, unless you are at the not the bottom, but those most impacted negatively by that system. And if we're disempowered and we don't have the money and we don't have the organization skills to really topple the system, then yeah, I don't know what we're doing.
I feel like I'm seeing a lot. What you just said in the last 15 seconds, I have never seen more of that in my life than the last 7, 8 months. Where, and these are people that I love, that I respect, that I work alongside now, that I will continue to give a damn alongside. I understand where they're coming from. I understand not wanting for this. I'm looking outside. I live in New York. This to like fall apart, to like
Yeah.
go away. Like I understand the idea of like, how can we make enough change to not just like blow everything up, but to keep as many people safe, right? It's this very like, it seems very mediocre. It seems very like, let's just try to not upset the cart too much. I've seen so much of that. And I also don't want to blow everything up, but we need to reimagine. I believe we're in a very pivotal point in our history where we need to reimagine the world that we're going to hand to our kids and their kids and their kids. And there's going to be some shit happening in the next few years. I think that has to happen because now more than ever, what you just described is happening. This idea that, again, when I began to deconstruct my conservatism and I became a liberal and then kept going, right? Because I realized that liberal wasn't where I wanted to stay. I wanted to become a full blown, leftist. Um, like I quickly saw, not quick enough, but I quickly saw, especially in the last 7, 8 years, that like, okay, sure, I'm going to vote Democrat because they seem to have our good in mind a little more than the conservatives. But it became apparent very quickly that, like, as you said, Biden and Trump, just two sides of the same coin.
It's all money. It's all money.
It's all
It's all money.
money. How many Democrats, right? Progressives, the people that are for all the people, right? The true pro-lifers, right? Not the fake pro-lifers like conservatives. We're always like, oh, the Democrats are for as many people as possible. And then we have seen them turn their backs on the
Mhm.
Palestinian people. And then you go and do a little Google search. How much money has so-and-so gotten from AIPAC? And then you're like, no shit.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands, millions. There's a very prominent female politician, Miss Hillary Clinton, that has been a champion of women's rights and human rights for decades, sprinkled with a lot of controversies and this and that throughout her. And then you see it now where she is just antagonizing pro-Palestinian peaceful protesters that are just demanding stop killing the people, and she's belittling them. And then you look at, oh, well, millions of dollars from AIPAC. That is what you're going to get behind the mic and say. And so I believe we are, Genesis, I believe we're at a point where it's like, I don't know what's coming. I'm not anxious for bad things to happen to people that I have been fighting for people that you've been fighting for, marginalized folks, queer folks, black folks, brown folks, immigrants, refugees. I don't want to speed up them getting hurt, them getting further marginalized. But this is not working, what we're experiencing right now. It's not working anymore. I don't think it ever
Sure.
was, but like the mask is off. It's really, really not working now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the the humility in me, like we look at the trajectory of human history or even zero into American history and American imperialism. And we can even say something about Israel and the Zionist experiment. You know, these are experiments,
Yes.
right? And sometimes experiments fail. And if the foundation of an experiment is naturally built upon the eradication of another people, the ethnic cleansing and pushing out another people through violence, the enslavement of other people, which America was, all of our wealth can be traced back to the slave trade in terms of the legacy of like what made America one of the most powerful countries. It's all built upon the oppression of other people. So when your experiment is built upon that, take me out of it. Take people who don't want Israel there are people who don't want Israel to exist. There are people who think that people have the right to return there. There are people here who think the natives have a right to return here. Take that out of it and just implement natural consequence.
Yeah.
This is where I'm at of like, this is a moving train. And we talked about this before. This is a moving train. I don't want the destruction of people. I don't want the killing of people. But whenever systems start to fail, um, you see violence happening. You see people resisting that can cause violence. And then you see a reaction to that resistance that causes violence. Like these are all things because it's unnatural. What the experiments are unnatural.
Yeah.
Right. Anytime you have to mass kill anything or anybody, that is unnatural.
Yes.
We are to create, we are to collaborate, we are meant to coexist. So anything outside of that, just because, humans have an inclination, well, I want to do this, I deserve this, I'm entitled to this. That's not the way nature works.
Yes.
So the natural consequences that we're seeing, and America is failing. The capitalist bubble has burst many times before, whether it was
Yes.
the housing market of things that, just look at history. So I'm not trying to stick my leg out and have it break off on this moving train, trying to stop what has been going on before I was even on this earth. Before I was even born, this train has been moving, right? We're all kind of just riding this train, seeing what's happening. If we don't like where the train's going, we'll vote or we'll rah-rah about it. But the American experiment is failing, and we're seeing the consequences of that. We're living through the time where empire is on decline.
Yeah.
Like it's hard for us to see it now, but those of us who are students of history and macro thinkers and can see trajectories and patterns know that it's going like this. So Trump, Biden, to me, they're just symptoms of something's crashing down.
Yep.
So I mean, I'm staying aware, I'm staying awake, I'm keeping my heart open, and my message will always be love, compassion, freedom for all human beings. That will never change. I mean that for my Jewish people. I mean that for my Black folks. I mean that for the white folks, or European folks who have assimilated to whiteness. I mean that for all people and all children. That won't change. I won't let the world, because of the consequences of a failed experiment, make me feel anything in my heart other than love for other people first and foremost. So that's where I'm at in my whole journey. I'm not trying to blow a system up. It's not what I want. I'm just observing that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%.
Right.
I love that. I love that. I was going to save a little bit of a deeper dive into people, not things, till the last section of our conversation, but I'm going to bring it up since you're already preaching, and I'm sort of preaching over here. Let's do that now, and then we'll talk about specific sort of things that you've created and are making, and things that people need to know about. They need to buy and go consume and share and all that stuff. But let's dive deeper into this because I think lots of the people that listen to this show, they are like us, imperfect, trying to figure it out, trying to figure out how to navigate this tricky task that we had no choice. It was thrust upon us to live in this crazy world, right? This world that is driven by money. It's driven by power. It's driven by a few megalomaniacs that get to tell us who to be and how to live and how much money we get to make and how we get to make it. We didn't ask to be here. We're here, providence of the universe, and here we are. And we are living in the United States. Speaking of experimental sort of situations, this country is an experiment. And only a couple hundred years in, it's already utterly failed multiple times over. The sort of forthcoming one, I think, being the biggest one. So as we struggle, as we think about how to stand up for Palestine and Sudan and Congo and Haiti and Afghanistan and here in the US and all kinds of people in all kinds of places, we figure out how we're going to vote in November or not vote, as we figure out our role in this forthcoming chapter of wherever we live. We have awesome listeners all over the world, but most are here in North America. Um, as we figure out how to move forward, tell us, teach us, people, not things. Again, we've already gone into it a little bit, but where did it come from? Like, what was the moment that you in your career that you decided to sort of create the philosophy and practice of people, not things? It's obviously like it's in your demeanor, it's in your work, it's in your language, it's in your when you talk, this sort of, yeah, this very compassionate, um loving but firm sort of spirit just like comes out. And that's not easy to have in today's world, especially someone who you don't work like a 9 to 5, like in an office where you can sort of ignore what's going on in the world. Like you're in it, you're in the shit each and every day, and you still show up with sort of this like peaceful, uh, Dalai Lama sort of, spirit while still being a force of nature. Um, so how did this sort of come about? And then let's walk through. We don't have to do the deep dive. I'm going to link to other resources you've created to sort of
Sure.
do a more deep dive into people, not things. But man, it's so beautiful, and I want to learn today. So help us.
Sure. The first pillar of people, not things, is that we are all complex human beings worthy of dignity, full stop, first and foremost. So when I wake up in the morning, I remind myself of that and I exude that every day. I don't care if it's with my Uber driver. I don't care if it's with a billionaire funder that I'm meeting. I don't care if it's with from janitor to CEO. Every human being is worthy of dignity, first and foremost, before I see those labels that I just named, right? No matter the race or economic class, I don't care. I'm going to approach you with respect and dignity first and foremost. That might sound simple to most people, but we are programmed to do the opposite. And we don't know we're programmed to do the opposite until we actually start to practice the philosophy of people, not things. When you start to catch yourself of like, whoa, what are these biases or stereotypes of this person I've never even met? It's
Mm,
programming, right? Or, like we have assumptions about rich people, just as we have assumptions around poor people or our homeless siblings, right? So that's the first pillar, to come from a place like that. And that means to deprogram things that I've learned from my community, from my family, from the media, from school. It means a self practice. This is what people, not things philosophy is about. I can't control anything but myself. That's why I don't go and tell people that they should practice this philosophy or any philosophy. You do what you want. I don't care. I can only control how I treat people, how I interact with nature. And in order to do that in a way that feels good to me, free to me, that frees my mind from the programming, is to eradicate 4 barriers within myself and apply practices that eradicate these 4 barriers every single day. Barrier of fear, barrier of control, barrier of communication, barrier self-acceptance. Because if I can't accept the things about myself, even my dark inclinations, my dark intentions, my shadow work, if I can't really look at that, if I have to drink or surround myself with people so I don't have to think about my shit, if I have to scroll social media all the time when I have a moment of boredom, I'm not really accepting myself.
mm,
If I have to go consume and buy a whole bunch of things just to make me feel validated, I'm not practicing my self-acceptance. So how can I accept you? How can I not look at you, what you have on, what you're saying in the world? How can and not have compassion for you if I can't do that for myself? And how can I look at a Trump supporter and say, I don't agree with everything that they're saying, but there's times where I have room for growth in that I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm operating from fear or bigotry. There are times where I'm still doing that, me. And I am one of the most multi-faith raised person, multi-racial person. So if it's still in me, then how can I judge another person? So this is how I live. Truly, I
Let me interject real quickly that because of where we are in history, where we are in time right now, I assume, and I'm asking this for me and for many listening, I assume you're also talking about Zionists and people that are supporting what's happening right now in the world, things that we're fighting against, right? Like that's learning how to see them as well.
oh yeah, they're human beings.
Yes.
They're
It's
human beings. I
it's
wish I
so
could say
easy.
I wish I could tell you that they're aliens or monsters or supernatural being. They're human beings who believe a certain ideology. We are all just the sums of our ideology, another principle of people, not things. So if you can look at it like that, a lot of people, I did this with my partner the other day, where we sat down and I pushed her, I challenged her. I was like, think about all the ideologies that you embody that reflect in your behavior that you've never thought about as an ideology, something that you were programmed to think. Sit there and think about it. And it was really hard for her. It's hard for most people. That's why it's a
Mm,
practice. That's why it's work of like, what do I believe that I've never questioned as an American person, as someone who identifies as a man in a patriarchal society, someone who identifies as a woman or a non-binary person, right? What do you truly believe and why do you believe it? Is it your own thoughts? Is it your own conclusions about research that you've done? Most of the time, it's not. So when we talk about Zionist folks, they are indoctrinated with the ideology of Zionism, nationalist fervor. That's why Einstein and a lot of Jewish intellectuals at the time were not for Zionism,
mm,
because they knew if you apply national fervor, right, and an ethno state, automatically we, because they saw what was happening in Germany at the time under the Nazis. They saw that whenever you're applying those type of ideologies and teaching and rearing children to believe that, there's no way it doesn't result in expulsion, in killings, in othering, and dehumanization of other people. It's really so simple. It's not something you have to really think deeply about, right? So Zionists are just human beings, and sometimes I do struggle with this aspect of, I have a line in one of the poems, Mississippi, the Microcosm, is, you forfeited your humanity in order to deny mine.
yes.
I'll
Oof.
say that again. You forfeited your humanity in order to deny the humanity of another, right? Because what does it mean to be human and be part of a human community? It doesn't mean that you're entitled to kill and expel people just so that your kind can live in a certain place. That's that's mass insanity, right? But for me to sit here and be like they're monsters, they're something other than human, that's doing a disservice, because then we are doomed to repeat it if we don't analyze the base. Like I'm going back to Trump in America. If we don't analyze the base and we just want to point at the people, we're doomed to repeat it. As a student of history, my father had me learning about the Holocaust and World War II and World War I and the rise of National Socialism in Germany since age 5. I write
Mm,
about it in my book. It's a poem that I have. That's when I saw the Holocaust and what the Nazis did with the dehumanization of Jewish people and killing them, even the babies. It changed me forever as a child. And I said, when I'm big enough, when I'm old enough, I'm going to stand up for children, all children. I don't care who they are. If this was happening to any other group of people, and as a lifelong activist, it has been happening to other groups of people, and I'm vocal then, I'm going to be vocal now. But if we don't get to the root, right?
yep.
When the Jewish people, when the Nazis were pointing at the Jewish people and telling the other Germans, this is why.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is why you aren't getting this. This is why da, da, da. This is why they're taking every da, da, da. Pinpointing the blame on the Jewish people. That gave the public permission to turn a blind eye, not do anything, not say anything when Jewish folks started getting picked out of the street, when their businesses started getting smashed up and acquired. The public has to accept it. And I told you, the most tantalizing thing in the world is to tell somebody you are inherently better than them, these people bad, you good. That's what the Nazis did. And all throughout history, This is what has been done to get the public's permission to steal resources from people, to mass kill people, to take and feel entitled to doing things. Black people and white people in America. Black people bad, good, white people good. That means we can do this to them. We can incarcerate them in mass because Black people are criminals. It's still happening today at a higher rate than it has ever in human history, in American history. So whenever you have that element of dehumanization, back to people, not things. People are not things. They're not just the labels. That type of mentality of dehumanization makes it ripe for exploitation, ripe for incarceration, ripe for war. So it's a peace movement in all of it, but it's about analyzing the foundation of things, and it starts with you. Are you downloading the propaganda that says you're better than somebody else? And if so, what are you doing to get rid of that programming and focus on being an example of light and love and compassion in this world? Because we only have a limited time on this earth. I intend to spend my time, promoting this versus pointing and negative towards other people and dehumanizing other people. Let's get to the ideology of why Zionists think this way. Why did the Nazis think this way? Why do white people think this way against Black people? Or Christian conservatives think this way about gay people? Let's think about it. Let's talk about that.
Once people realize, once they're able to like face the barrier of fear, self-love, control, communication, once they sort of dive into this concept, what's next? So there's like facing it, there's like realizing the things that are keeping us from becoming fully human, the things that are keeping us from really embracing people, not things. I've had there have been a few times I refuse to call humans animals, even when they're acting in animalistic ways. But there have been a few times these last few months where I have referred to Zionists as monsters. And there's a difference though, right? Like somebody can be acting in sort of monstrous ways. They could be acting like something and sort of carrying out monstrosities or behaving in a way that isn't in this sort of way. But there's a difference between it. I should shy away from it altogether and deploy sort of more compassion and more understanding altogether. But there is a difference, right, between calling some, like there's no difference between calling someone an animal or me saying I'm not going to do that, but then I'm going to call you a monster. Like I am taking away all of the experiences you've had, all the things that led you to believe the fucked up thing that you believe now.
Complex human being.
I'm taking away your human experience.
Yep, your complexity.
Because again, I've believed some really fucked up things in my life. Not
Right.
because I wanted to, not because I wanted to.
And you accept that. You accept yourself as someone who has believed that, someone who has been indoctrinated. So if you can see that in yourself, you have to be able to see that in Zionist folks. Yeah. You have to. If not, you have not conquered the barrier of self-acceptance. Because when we attribute the darkness to other people and without seeing our darkness and doing our shadow work, then we are ripe to do the same mistakes, to be indoctrinated ourselves. This is part of the human complexity where throughout history, we have been indoctrinated. There has been plenty of case studies, empirical evidence that there's a side to the human consciousness that can be indoctrinated to do inhumane things. Yeah. The psychology of humans. That's part of us. The darkness and the monster is part of the human nature. We have to accept that. But we have to look at those things that make the opportunity, the environment right to mobilize and indoctrinate people to do inhumane things. If we're not looking at that and we're just saying them monster meet good, we are doomed to keep repeating this as a human race. That's what people, not things teaches.
So how do we practically, let's just take what's happening right now. I kind of want to learn from you because I watch sort of what you post and what you're not posting. Like it's really difficult right now. Sort of embracing this people, not things, not just ideology, like lifestyle. This is like
it is a lifestyle.
It should change everything about you. So if we embrace that fully, and I'm not asking for a step-by-step instruction book because it really is different for everybody and we all got to process through it. But like, how do we how do we figure out how to see Ben Gvir as fully human? The Minister of National Security in Israel, fully human, and not call him a monster or an animal or whatever else.
I mean, you can. I'm not saying people shouldn't. Like, if you know, part of it is being angry, and part of it is being wanting revenge and vengeance. Like, these are all human things too. I'm just saying, like, recognize the complexity of all your
Yeah,
feelings. I'm not
that
saying anyone not to do anything. I'm just saying me, because
that's good.
it's only with me.
That's good.
I'm not telling anyone to do anything or even follow this philosophy. People have been asking me what I follow because of how I move in the world, and I'm happy to share. But if someone is bombing your children and killing your family in mass, yes, you're going to think that person's a monster. And I'm not telling you not to.
Yeah.
I want to be clear about
Yeah.
that.
No, no, no. You're not telling people to follow this way. I'm telling
No,
people to
no.
follow this way because
Oh,
I think it's really beautiful. But that's a great clarification that like even with this lifestyle,
listen,
with
if
this
somebody killed my kids, I would do everything I could to kill them.
you'd be a fucking yeah. Yeah.
Because, and I'm accepting this part about myself. This
Yeah.
is part of the self-acceptance. And I am a peace activist. I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in violence. If somebody is actively killing my children, my family, my wife, you better believe I will do everything in my power to make sure that person never kills another child.
Yeah. And this is the complexity that you're talking about
I'm
that
only human.
we are so quick to compartmentalize even what it
I'm not
means
an
to be.
angel.
Yeah.
I'm not a hero. Because that's another way we dehumanize each other too. Place so much the good person, the
Yep.
hero. She's a leader. I ain't trying to lead shit.
Yep.
I'm trying to create leaders.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I'm telling you out of my mouth, like I would resist
Yeah.
if somebody was killing my family.
Yeah.
So I'm not telling anyone to not do what you have to do, right? But at the same time, I put myself in the shoes of like the hostages, the Israeli hostages, how terrified I would be as me, an American living on stolen land. If our native siblings came in and just kidnapped me, I'd be terrified. That's part of the empathy part of it,
Yeah.
right? And someone would look at me and say, well, I mean, I am well, I'm half colonizer because half of my family on the black
There you
side
go.
was
Yeah.
brought here without their consent. They didn't
100%.
colonize. They didn't have a choice, right? But as someone who is, say, a white person or someone not native to this land, someone would look at someone kidnapping you in resistance to what the genocide that America has done on the natives and say a right to return and be justified in that. You get what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
at the same time, it'd be scary. And it's like, depending on how far you are removed from history, you're not even going to understand why, because you've been told your whole life, this is my land. Just like
Yeah.
the Jewish folks in Israel are, you know, say, this is our land, this is our land, this is your land, you have a right to it. So when those Israeli hostages are kidnapped, it's hard for those who are indoctrinated to be like, oh, actually, these people are resisting you occupying their land because you're indoctrinated and taught something since you were a baby, right? But I could still hold empathy for those hostages
Yep.
and like want them to be home with their families, want them to be
100%.
safe and live a full life, right? These are the complexities of human existence. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't tell a Palestinian person, oh, just let it rock
No.
if somebody's killing your
No.
family. I
Yeah.
would be doing a disservice to humanity in general.
Yep. Yep. So this is we're going to move on because we could spend hours talking about this. So one thing I want to ask is this document that I'm looking at, 39-page document, is that something that can be shared?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So I'll link friends when this is out, when you're listening to this, let's give a damn.com, go to the podcast page, and this will be linked there because you're going to want to go through it. I've read it before. You resent it to me for this, and I was looking through it before this, and man, it's full of gold. But what I love about the last couple minutes of us talking about people, not things, is that this is very like, this is what we're aiming for. This is the kind of life and lifestyle that we're aiming for. And you're you're never going to perfectly achieve it, but let's shoot for it while also understanding that we are human beings that smell, we take a shit every day, we eat, we drink, we get mad, we have sex, we have we get angry, we get jealous, right? Like this awesome way of living is going to be wrapped up in all the things that we're feeling, and we're going to fail at it. And
Yeah.
we're going and occasionally we'll get it right, and we should feel good about that. Like, oh, okay, I'm taking one step forward and not always three steps back.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. It's my simple attempt, my humble attempt to add to the spiritual
yeah,
revolution, which
yes,
I told you in America, we had the Industrial Revolution. We're in the midst of a technical revolution, but we haven't coupled it with the spiritual revolution. That's why within industry, we're exploiting people. With
yep,
technology, we're using technology to kill children. And you get what I'm saying? Because
yep,
the spiritual revolution has not happened in tandem.
yep.
That has been on the decline while the other revolutions, human innovation is going up, but the spiritual revolution is not matching. And this is my very humble attempt to try to match the spiritual revolution. And
Give some language to it. Yeah,
there's many people around the world, including yourself, who are they don't know or intentionally doing this, but they're trying to add to the spiritual revolution to match or surpass the technological revolution. So that, as Marxists would say, the modes of production are used for the good of the collective. All the
yes.
technology, all the things that we have, with the technology we have, everyone can eat, everyone could have a house, everyone can have a little piece of land. Um, the technology, the children could be cared for, but we're using it for the opposite against humanity and nature because we are mismatching the spiritual transcendence, the technological transcendence. That's how I feel.
I long for that world so much. I think I wish people could, I wish we could look into the future if that will ever happen. I wish we could look into the future and help people see what they would feel like when everybody has enough, when
Mm,
everybody has food and water. Because I feel like right now it's like, oh yeah, totally. Like I want that, but also I want to make a shit ton of money and go on vacation. I want this and that, and
yeah,
I want more stuff and
the
more things.
programming, the
And that
programming.
and that feels good for like 3.5 seconds. Like I live in New York, right? So like I feel like I want to go to all of these places where people live in, five, six, $10 million apartments, and they're just living for like the next vacation and the next car and the next to whatever. And I want to like, if there's a way to like show them, hey, I'm not asking you to like blow your whole world up, but like, what would you trade all of this in? Would you trade all of this in for a much simpler life if you knew that all of your neighbors had enough to eat, enough to drink, enough to wear, a way to get from A to B, a place to go work at and feel good about the work they're doing. Like I just feel like I long for that world so much. I hope we get there,
Yeah.
and I hope we get to some version of that. I don't see it happening, but I really hope that we get to
I
some
think
version of
it
that.
I think eventually it has to happen. And we talk about complexities and we think about capitalism and a lot of us on the, like bad, bad, bad. But you think about the competitiveness that capitalism breeds, would we have had an industrial revolution or
Sure.
technological revolution if it wasn't for that? So we have all of these really beautiful human uh architecture, ingenuity, things that have come out of capitalism. But like as it fails,
Yeah.
we take those good things and we need to apply it to our society now, not what it was back then.
Yeah.
Right. And use those things for the good of the common collective. And I think that there will come a point where we kind of have to. I truly believe that. So I think we have to see the complexities and good and bad in every single thing.
There you go again with the complexities of life, because you're so right that like we wouldn't be where we are today, which is like, again, there's some really shitty things happening in the world, but there's also some really incredible uh, things that we've created, things that we've made, things that we're dreaming up right now that
Yep.
literally are mind blowing, that
Don't
wouldn't
forget.
that wouldn't have happened if we
Yep.
hadn't embraced capitalism to the core. If we didn't use capitalism to drive everything we did for decades and decades and decades, we wouldn't be
Yeah,
here.
and it was on the backs of exploiting and harming other people. Like
Yeah,
America wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the exploitation of Black people. It
no.
just wouldn't exist, right? So we're still dealing with the natural consequences of the foundation of experiment, you know, but like this, the ebb and flow of time, the ebb and flow of human progress and transcendence. And I think that um I can't just look at the bad. I can't just look at the negative. I can only see things for what it is. That's the stoicism talking, which is
Yeah,
you see a lot of that in the philosophy of people not things. I take from all different types of spiritualities and philosophies. The stoicism part is like being able to observe, like not insert myself in everything, not insert
yeah,
my emotion and my trauma into every single thing. I just sit back and observe and learn. History is a valuable, valuable teacher if it's correct history and written correctly. Right? Because misinformation. But
yeah.
I think, I want most people to think more. I want people to do their own research. I want people to live freely. And that means freeing your mind first. And people, not things is a guide to free my mind. And then that shows up in my behavior and shows up in the way that I teach when I do motivational speaking in schools. And maybe I spark another child to open their mind and their heart to see the complexities and not see everything as binary and black and white. That's not a free world.
No. We're going to get to your work here, but you said something that now I need to do 1 or 2 minutes on, and that is you said do your own research. You said at the beginning. I completely agree, but the Trump folks and the KKK folks and the white supremacist folks and the Zionist folks and they've all done their own research too, right? So what does that mean for you? Like, how do you go about making sure that when you're doing your own research, you are going to the right sources that aren't leading you astray? You're going to primary sources. You're finding the good stuff versus because again, I've heard a lot of my relatives, I won't name names, God bless them, but they came to the conclusion that they, as brown Guatemalan immigrants, should vote for Trump because they did their own research. And I'm just like, what the fuck, you know? So like,
Yeah.
so how do you, Genesis, how do you do your own research in a way that keeps you on the straight and narrow, that keeps you going to the right places for the right things?
Common sense is the best research, but if you don't have common sense, multiple sources. So I'll read far right, medium right, middle, far left, medium left, Antifa. I'll read all different types of things about a certain subject if I am interested in uh speaking on that subject or voting on that subject. If it informs my behavior at all, that particular subject, I will read multiple sources and try to get an idea of like the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? But multiple sources. And then if something is said, a study is cited, look up that study and see if it
Yeah,
actually happened, because that's
yeah,
a real thing that's happening now is like people are like, well, there was a study, but there was no study.
yeah,
And if you're not researching that part, it's not just about I'm going to read this news source anymore. Like you really have to dig deep if you want to really be informed, if you want to actually be a critical thinker. If you don't and you're okay with the confirmation bias and letting that dictate how you run your life and how you behave and treat other people, you're a slave. And if you're happy, there's a lot of people who are content in slavery. Like you can't free everybody. They're very comfortable in their enslavement, in their
yeah,
mental enslavement. And that's across the board in all different types of communities. So um, that doesn't make me angry that they're content in their slavery. I just know that I live in a more free way and it's beautiful, and if I have an opportunity to talk to somebody and they ask me, I don't impose my shit on anybody. If they ask me like, how do you live so free? Like, how are you operating knowing everything that's going on and you're still showing up with love and light and common sense and freedom? I can share my practices, but if you don't want to do them, you don't want to check your sources, you're comfortable in your privilege of confirmation bias, that's on you. It
yeah,
starts with you.
yeah. That's really helpful.
Yeah, don't get
Uh,
mad at because that's disrupting your peace.
right.
And nobody about to disrupt my peace. I don't fight too hard for it
Yes,
to
that's
keep it.
amazing.
My
That's
inner
right.
child is chilling. My inner child chilling. I make sure I water and nurture that little girl every day.
Mm, I love that idea. You wrote a book, came out last year, correct? Or your latest book, you've written several. Your latest book, People Not Things, Love Poems and Paintings for Humanity. If you're on the audio, Genesis is holding it up in the video right now. It's a really beautiful, it's a beautiful book that I'm gonna all throughout as we release this podcast, I'm gonna plug it because it needs to be on people's shelves. And it's something that I think you could read it in a one setting, but I think it needs to be, it's one of those books, actually, just like it's, I think of it similar to like Fred Joseph's new book that's coming out this week, We Alive Beloved. It's a book of poems, and it's like, but it's these amazing poems from a black man that has been through so much, and like this is People Not Things is like We Alive Beloved, where it's like keep that on your desk, and whenever it hits you, like open it up and read and think about it, and
Yeah,
maybe write something about it, and maybe have a cry over it, but like read it all the way through, but like keep it near. And that's what I think of People Not Things. um Tell us about the book, and if you're up for it, can I put you on the spot to read a poem or two that will give people just the taste of what they're going to get when they absolutely buy it as a result of this
sure.
conversation?
Sure, I do. I have two poems ready. So the full title is People Not Things: Love Poems and Paintings for Humanity. So I'm a visual artist amongst other things, audio artist, poet, musician. So I have a traveling art exhibit called People Not Things, and this book is kind of the reflection of that exhibit. So you'll see paintings. Each poem has a painting in my art exhibit. You go, you see the painting, there's a QR code, you can go and listen to my customized original poem that I wrote
That's
in
awesome.
conversation with the piece, right? So I've shown twice in Los Angeles, twice in New York, working on doing something in Atlanta here. So they're love poems for humanity. This is my love note for everything that I've gone through and witnessed in my community. My trauma, my triumph, my beauty, my memories are in the form of poems and paintings in this book. This first poem is called Lumpen Proletariat. I'll say it again. It's not a phrase, it's not a term a lot of people are familiar with. Lumpen Proletariat. Um, I was reading some work by Franz Fanon, and he was using this term. So I wrote a poem. He was my muse for this poem. Lumpen proletariat. Purchase the rags, assuming them finest of cloths. Society following celebrity right off the cliff. To an untimely demise. The emperor's new clothes are dirty rags, ugly as hell. Rush to buy them, scrounging up the last dollar, a testament to a declining intellect, an imprisoned mind, a failing society, a nation of followers, a willingness to be led right off the cliff, of illusion and false gain, a middle class man wants not rebellion, lest his scraps be taken, his child stripped of the dirty rags. He blows his wages on for his neighbor's approval. The weak are bound by chains of conformity, comfortable in confinement. Look to those on the fringes of existence. Only those cast away can build a new castle. For their minds are outside the bounds. They know dirty rags when they see them. They wear theirs with pride and no illusion. Only the lowest rungs are immune to the trap of the follower mentality. Those who have little want a lot. Those who have nothing and want not have it all, have the key to liberate us.
Mm, mm.
Yep.
We could talk for an hour just about that.
I think we just talked for hours about
Well,
that.
we did.
um, let's see. I have traditional love poems in here that I've written about like partners and things, but I think for the sake of this, I want to do, oh, here's a good one. This one's called Activists for Sale.
Mm.
Activists for Sale, a 2-for-1 deal. We love the idea of freedom, but not enough to make it real. God bless the paradox of bottled magic and brilliance bought. Counterculture, a rebel's thought, a price to pay when the truth is sought. I write my soul, you write a check. Deliver my pain, you pay my rent. Like Banksy or Cobain, one is unknown, the other is fame. Only one is alive to refute the claim. We cry for freedom while we hand out chains. Tell the truth through deception of art. Whatever we protest, we perpetuate. Whatever we criticize, we make stronger. From Jesse to Sharpton, from Fannin to King, one scope of impact is a subjective thing. The promise of change, the voice of the voiceless, agreements are made, revolution is pointless. None can avoid it, not even the anointed. We lose our heads on the chopping block if we can't be sold on the auction block. Activists for sale.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing both of those. I have to applaud you, not just on, I mean, you're so talented. You're so fucking talented. But
Thank
also
you.
like I love you have really I want to hear you talk about all the things. And I want to hear you share all your poems because you have such great like delivery.
Thank
That's
you.
not always common with I have a lot of friends who write poetry and on paper it's like, "Oh my God, that is so brilliant." And then they recite it and it's like, "Well, I wish I could unhear that and just read it again."
Yeah, that's
And
real. That's
and
real.
yeah, it's real, right? You know that. You live amongst poets. So I'm sure you've heard that a time or two or
Yeah.
10 or 100 where it's just like, "Oh man, like you I'm just not hearing it." And with you, I'm very clearly hearing it. And so, friends,
Thank
I'm
you.
going to be linking that obviously in the show notes. You can get, where would you prefer? Book? I mean, I'm sure you can get it through bookshop.org, Amazon. Would you want to get it through your website? Is there a more specific way you want them to get that?
No specific way, whatever you're
Just get it.
comfortable
Just get it.
spends. Yeah, it's available on all those things you just named. So, I just wanted to state, I thank you for that compliment. I really received that. I've been a hip hop performer, even a battle rapper, since I was 14 years old. So, that shows in my delivery of the poetry because I started early with performing on stages with rap. So I'm a little more animated, a little
Yeah,
more sarcastic, and like, when I read my pieces. So thank you for acknowledging that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's very, very, very clear. Okay, we have just a few minutes left. I want to be respectful of your time, but I wanted to talk, man, we could talk about the art show you just did in Brooklyn here in New York, which was really great. It benefited incarcerated artists who made the art. We could talk more about Strive Till I Rise. I'll link to all these things. One thing I wanted to, since we only have a few minutes left, I want to talk about Mississippi. I want to talk about the flag. I want to talk about your role in that. I want to talk about a video, some photos and videos that people can find where you have a noose around your neck with a Mississippi with a flag around with a Confederate flag around your shoulders. Um, let's talk about this whole experience for you because you were one of many. You are quick to say no. It was a collaboration. It was obviously
Yes.
lots of folks that caused this to happen, but not many of us can say that we played a part in our racist state flag literally changing after being around for so long. There is now a new flag that is beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful flag.
Thank you.
And you had a role in that. So take us back to sort of when that experience started. I know it's recent in the last few years, but how did you get involved in the movement that ultimately resulted in the Mississippi state flag? And kind of include in that, like, one thing I wanted to ask earlier on when you were sharing your story is you've had quite, on many levels, you've had quite the life. But one of those is your first 20 years of your life, you lived in what is a state that is still one of the most looked down upon states in the country, one of the poorest, um, uh, high unemployment rate, lots of poverty, lots of all kinds of things. I mean, even when I think about how I've thought about Mississippi, like I don't have bad thoughts about Mississippi, but I don't have good thoughts. I don't have like oh, and what's crazy is so many strong, amazing people, Ruby Bridges and so many others have come out of Mississippi, right? It's Mississippi has made people like Genesis B and Ruby Bridges and others for us to sort of enjoy their work and for a long time to come. But again, it's this looked down upon place that just people don't generally speak up about. So, and then you moved to New York when you were 20, lived in, one of the wealthiest places the world has ever known, like so much wealth concentrated in one area. You lived there for 10 years. So you've had quite this like juxtaposed sort of life. So yeah, talk about the flag, talk about your role
Yeah.
in it.
So, quote, to understand the world, you need to understand a place like Mississippi, unquote, William Faulkner. Especially anyone who's working in social justice in America or around for any community needs to study Mississippi deeply. During the civil rights movement, Mississippi, those deep South states, when I say deep South, especially Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, but Mississippi at the top was one of the most egregious in terms of violence against not only Black people, but freedom riders, people who would come from outside the state to help with the literacy schools, our Jewish collaborators who helped to establish literacy schools. Some folks were killed. Like, they knew when you went there is a high risk of you being killed or beat. So because it has one of the most egregious histories on suppression, the history of the strategy to overcome the oppression there is extremely unique
Hmm.
because the blueprint of voter suppression, redlining, how to keep Black people under control. Since Mississippi is a huge contributor to that blueprint, states like California, states like Georgia has implemented that blueprint. You need to study the strategies that were put against that blueprint. If you don't, you're missing a big chunk of history that can be applied to your current movement. So I'm saying that to the current and upcoming generation of activists. Learn about Mississippi, learn about the civil rights struggle in Mississippi. That being said, I love my state. It's beautiful. I'm always repping and I'm always rocking the jerseys. I'm rocking things. You should go and check it out for yourself. Some of the most beautiful landscape ever. And so the flag flew for over 120 plus years. So that's a lot of fighting and collaborators who have been trying to get that flag changed, right? So I just came on the tail end, and there are so many collaborators that I worked with who are applying different strategies in different ways that was different from my own. Whether it was Judge Carlos Moore actually bringing a civil suit or a lawsuit, up into the Supreme Court, I believe it went that far against that flag. My father in 2021 brought a lawsuit against that flag saying it's a
Wow.
religious symbol. See, his angle was like, it's a religious symbol. It's called the St. Andrew's Cross, and that does not belong in a state flag. Leah Campbell and the team at Mississippi Rising Coalition doing on-ground work. Maisie Brown and the student groups doing these, I'm always naming these people because I think what I did, it got a lot of press and it kind of put me out there as like, even New Zealand Times was writing about my protest that you said about me draping myself in the Confederate flag with the news. And it brought a lot of attention to a localized issue. But there are people doing this long before I kind of got thrown into it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the flag change in 2021, there was a vote and we do have a beautiful new flag and it's still surreal. I saw one of my nieces at her graduation while the flag was still had the Confederate emblem, and myself included, my brothers, we all had to walk under that flag at our graduation. And for those of you who don't know about the Confederate flag, read the cornerstone speech of the Confederacy. It'll tell you everything you need to know. The cornerstone, like the cornerstone foundational idea of the Confederacy from their mouths is that the inferiority of Black people, right? So I know they like to say, hey, it's our heritage and it wasn't about slavery, but the cornerstone speech from, I think he was the vice president of the Confederacy, they say for themselves what the foundational belief is, and everything kind of builds off of that. So we had to walk under this flag saying that we are less than human. The highest, in the cornerstone speech, they say Black people, the highest potential for us is servitude. So we had to walk under that. That sets the tone for a lot of kids, Black kids growing up in Mississippi, which is 40% Black, y'all. 38 to 40% Black. And our tax dollars go to flying that flag. So I was just like, I don't want my other nieces, to walk under that flag. Now I have a 15-year-old niece who's going to be graduating soon, and she does not have to walk under that flag. That's my personal accomplishment. That's all I ever wanted. How it affects everything else and how our collaborative victory affects everyone else in generations to come. I think it's beautiful, but it started just from a personal want. Like I don't want my nieces to walk under that. And my nephew now, who's just born last week, you know,
Wow.
they have the highest potential. They can be what they want. They can do what they want. They can be something they've never even envisioned. I don't want them walking under that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, your nephew will not have to.
Yeah, no, no,
That'll be
yeah.
in
My three nieces, my other three nieces, and my nephew will not have to walk under that or go up into a school every day that's flying that, go into a courtroom if they get a traffic violation with that up behind the judge. Yeah,
it's incredible. We could talk a lot more about that, but thank you so much for the work you did there. I just love the more I learn about you, the more I love you and your spirit and your heart for this people, not things, this heart for what you said 10 minutes ago. Like you're not going to disturb, this little girl's peace that I keep cultivating and striving for. There's such a beautiful I'm not saying you're perfect. You've
far
inevitably got
from
your
it.
shortcomings and all that. But it
Yeah.
seems like so far you've been able to figure out how to sort of balance it all. You're teaching me a lot as a friend and as someone who's observing your work. I really, really, really appreciate you. I know it's not coming out till next year, but there's a doc coming out that is
Yeah.
has you as the subject of it in this whole movement of the changing of the state flag of Mississippi. What can you tell us about that? That'll tease us until next year.
So it's produced by Moral Courage. So if you Google Moral Courage College or Moral Courage Project, you can learn more about their work and Breakout. And yeah, it kind of just follows my journey from that protest, that which was 2016 until the flag came down in 2021, and the civil discourse sessions that I had in Mississippi, along with my collaborator, whose name is Lewis. May he rest in peace. He recently passed. He wanted the flag to stay the same. And it started with just him and I having a conversation. And we were able to get to a common ground to the point where then he brought his community to the table. And we had more conversation where I brought my community to the table. And as a group, we started to humanize the issue and say, okay, we don't agree on this, but what can we agree on? And how can we implement that to better our communities, right? At a foundational level. So it follows that journey. And I'm really excited for it to come to the world because it's very unique. I don't think you really see people having real communication and civil discourse across issues that are so divisive. I think we kind of stay in our echo chambers and point at each other and dehumanize each other. That's like our way.
Yep.
We're programmed at this point for sure to do that. So again, it's our humble attempt, my collaborators and I, to offer an alternative way to approach the division that is within our nation, right? So we're just leading by example and show you in the real world how that can look in a place, even in Mississippi. So Moral Courage College actually offers these courses that allow you to deprogram and learn how to speak through solution-based practices with people who think differently from you and how to engage them as collaborators. And you see that kind of like in my work that I use in Mississippi as well. So Mississippi Turning, the trailer is out if people want to watch the trailer.
I'll link
But
to that.
yeah, maybe I can come back on the podcast once it launched and we can have a deeper conversation about it.
100%. That goes without saying. I was hoping you would agree, so you already did. Genesis B, my friend, artist, author, activist, advocate for social change, and all the other things. Thank you so much. This was an honor for me to be part of this conversation. I hope it's not the last or second to last or third to last or fourth to last
For
podcast
sure.
interview or conversation we have in a public way. Thank you so much for your work, for your
Yes.
wisdom. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. And let me just say, you said earlier that you love me, and I want you to know that I love you too. And I see the work that you are attempting to do in the world. And I acknowledge that it's very difficult, but I am grateful for you and your allyship, and continue to do the work. And I hope you do take away some of the nuggets that we talked about today and implement that in your work to be that example of light and compassion, and still stay firm in your boldness of sticking up and speaking up and standing up for people.
I receive all of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.